Hey Dojo friends, I thought we'd do something really fun today and take a look at this chart. I have a kind of a game for you. This is military stats. This was from 1587. This is documented. And what I did here is write down the percentages of troops and what they did in the battle. And here are the different roles here. So what I thought I'd do is for us to take a look and try to guess what percentage of the army was where. Now, before I say that, you have to remember that military clashes depend on many things. The period of history, the weapons that they had at the time, who was loyal to whom, the different clans that came together. When you think of a samurai battle, you may think of movie scenes where you have a couple hundred men, and that's sometimes the case. But there are also cases in time, like the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, where you had as many as 120,000 on one side samurai come together to fight. You had the battle from Tokugawa Ieyasu, when he was fighting the Toyotomi loyalists under Mitsunami, and they came together and they fought massive battles in even one day. This is from a period, 13 years before 1600? This was a period of time where the guns, the Tanegashima, started to come into fruition, and they were mass manufacturing those because they were just dominating the battlefields. Way back in the olden days, you had different types of weapons, and there's definitely misnomers in here of what people think was the most important weapon of the time. But again, I'm just taking one snapshot of one particular battle from 1587, taken from the Hojo clan, and this is what they are. You had something that was 27% of the battle, of the people in the battle. You had 19, 19, 14, 14, 6, and 1. Here are the options we have to choose from. What percentage do you think of the battle was made up of musketeers, people who had long rifles? What percentage of this particular battle do you think was archers? What percentage of the battle was ashigaru, foot soldiers? What percentage of the battle was spearmen? What percentage was mounted warriors on horses? What percentage was flag carriers? And what percentage might have been standard bearers? Now, flag carriers are the people that have the giant flags to build morale on horseback or to walk. Standard bearers could be flag carriers, but standard bearers also had very important jobs. You would have the people that would intimidate the opponents. You had standard bearers that had drums and musical instruments. They had different types of war fans and things to communicate. So with massive armies on the battlefield, any of you who do like marching band understand this, you have to have signalers, people that tell you what to do. So you'd have the people in the background, the commanders, the daimyo, things like that, giving commands out with their war fans. And then you'd have people, standard bearers, very dangerous job because people would try to kill you because you were communicating. So imagine a standard bearer having a conch shell and ringing out a scream of the conch shell at some point. You had a standard bearer who had a taiko drum at some point. You had guys that were doing different musical instruments, shooting off arrows in different ways to communicate to these massive amounts of people where to move and to attack. Tons of strategy. So that, even though it might seem like a foolish little job or a foolish little job of a guy carrying a flag, I'm the flag carrier and I'm just here to build morale. That was a very, very important job back then. All of these jobs had specific roles. But what percentage can you guess? What percentage? You could have skirmishes of just a few hundred samurai coming together to fight over a small fief or something, a small piece of land. And then you could have massive scale battles to determine who is going to be the leader. And you could have many clans come together to fight one other person. So just a whole bunch of coolness if you're interested in this stuff. Anyway, let's get back to this. I kind of made it into a game. We have the chart here. What I want you to do is when I tell you about a percentage, I want you to guess. How many do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 7 options, okay? So the largest percentage was 27% of this army. What do you think was the biggest part of this army? The gun people, the archers, the foot soldiers, the spearmen, the horseback riders, the standard bearers, and the flag carriers. What do you think? I'll give you a second to think. 20%, 27%, which is the one? Now, here's the answer. The answer to this is spearmen. Spearmen. Wow. You would think it would be guns or archers or horsemen. No, it was guys that carried this. This is a Yare spear, a real one. Look at the size of this thing. Can you imagine thousands of men in full armor coming at you with this? Now this is a real sharp spear. These went in length anywhere from 3 feet. I've seen them as much as 18, 19 feet long. And you would have these guys poking and stabbing at you with a spear over lines of warriors. So spearmen, this was a massive, the most feared, in my opinion, aside from perhaps the arrow, battlefield weapon. You'd think it was the sword, the tachi. No. Swords were tertiary, secondary weapons. It was spears and bows that took the most lives statistically. So 27% spearmen. All right, now we go down to we have 2 that are at 19%. What do you think was next? Any guesses? Here's one. We had mounted warriors. Horses, my gosh. Can you imagine 1,000 people on horses coming at you with spear, with bows, with naginata, with whatever they used? Mounted warriors were a massive part. Talk about intimidating factors when you have lines of horses coming at you and you're this little guy with a little pike and a little sword, and you have this 10-foot tall horse coming at you with a screaming warrior and a spear. You have very little chance. So mounted warriors were 19%. We have another 19%. Any guesses? What do you think? Would they be spearmen? Would they be foot soldiers, musketeers? What do you think was the next? Anyone guess? Well, you had foot soldiers. Foot soldiers. Called ashi garu. Foot soldiers would still have spears. And they would have swords, they would have pikes, I mean, you name it, naginata. So 19% of foot soldiers. Then it goes down to 2 with 14% here. What do you think those might have been? Any guesses? Yes, one of them was gunners. Again, the guns were brought over and mass manufactured because it was a long distance weapon, far superior to any sword. So you had Tanegashima rifles, and you had these guys and lines of guns. Of course, it took quite a while to reload the guns, so you'd have lines and then they'd back up, reload, put them on the shoulders of the front line, fire, take out a few dozen people, more would fire, and reload their weapons. So you had 14% gunners. Any other guesses for the next one? Any guesses? Yes, that's right, archers. Archers were a huge intimidating factor. These guys from far away would rain down arrows of death onto the team across from them. And that was one of the, I think, if I'm not mistaken, took the most lives were archers. Arrows, number one, as far as I know, archers took the most. Because arrows are cheap to make, easy to shoot, kind of random, but if you have archers that are practicing for days and months before the battle, and you're here fighting a guy on a horse or in front of you, and all of a sudden 3 arrows come down at this angle and hit you in the neck or the head, you're doomed. And that's why the armor is designed to absorb arrows. And some of these standard bearers had giant costumes that would absorb arrows. So archers are a vicious, vicious part of Japanese military history. And again, you see in movies guys with swords because it's noble and honorable. No, back then, it's about how many people can I get with the nastiest weapons to get the job done. So archers were the next. Foot soldiers are kind of with the spearmen here, so they're kind of the same idea. And then you had 6%. We're going way down to 6% now. What do you think was 6%? Was it flag carriers or standard bearers? Any guesses? You had standard bearers. These are the guys, the communicators, the ones that keep up the morale, really the intelligence part of the battle. Standard bearers. Don't underestimate that job. Very dangerous job, but very noble job. Just because you might not have killed the most warriors, well, you sent 150 people to the right place at the right time, and you were fulfilling the Lord and Commander's orders. So it was a very, very important job. And then 1%, that's right, obviously, is flag carriers. Again, not something to make fun of, just because it's not on the front lines. The flag carriers, the ones that communicated, the ones that kept the morale up, they kept the Mon crest of the family intact. They were, in essence, representing the family. You could be dying on the battlefield, and all of a sudden a guy rides by with a flag and says, "Get up and go, get up and go." The flag carrier had a very important job, even though it was a small amount of people. So there you go. I thought that was kind of fun. Just the Hojo clan from 1587. And again, these would have vastly shifted depending on the resources and the amount of guns you had, amount of people that you had, the loyalists and the loyal family. But imagine this in the Battle of Sekigahara, and this ended up to be 20,000 and 30,000 and 15,000 gunners and, I don't know, 10,000 archers. Can you even imagine the scale of the battle of 1600, and guys with spears? It kind of makes you forget about the samurai sword and the tachi and the katana, because they were just such lowly weapons on the battlefield. They were only if your spear was broken, your horse was killed, your bow was broken, and they were crashing into the front lines, would you get out your sword and kind of make it one-on-one battle. So there you go, just kind of a fun thing. We'll do more like this. And I do have breakdowns of entire battles. I have breakdowns of what people did, but in way more categories than just the simple 6 or 7 we had here. All right, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, like and subscribe to the channel. I don't often do this military type stuff, but it is kind of fun to do. It's very, very different and fun. I think it's fun to look at the old days. When I do, it really makes me appreciate where we live now. Where we live now. Can you imagine living back then? I've had fantasies about living back then, but then I see how good we have it now in this day and age, and I'm really grateful for living in our time now. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.